We've been sold a lie about food preservation. Walk into any grocery store and you'll see shelves full of pickles, sauerkraut, and fermented vegetables in glass jars with labels screaming natural and probiotic. But open that jar of store-bought pickles and you'll find vegetables that go bad in 3 weeks, taste like vinegar and chemicals, and provide almost zero of the gut health benefits they promise. What if I told you that medieval housewives, working in dirt floor cellars with nothing but clay pots and salt, created fermented vegetables that stayed perfect for 2 full years, contained more probiotics than any supplement you can buy, and actually improved in flavor and nutrition the longer they sat? Without vinegar, without pasteurization, without the refrigeration that we've been convinced is absolutely necessary. In this video, you'll discover 7 medieval fermentation techniques that created vegetables so nutritionally superior that modern food scientists are scrambling to understand how they worked. Methods so powerful they could eliminate your need for probiotic supplements forever and save you thousands on grocery bills. And at the end, the disturbing truth about why the food industry deliberately killed fermentation knowledge to keep you dependent on products that barely work. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever bought expensive artisan sauerkraut or kimchi from Whole Foods only to find it goes slimy or develops off flavors within a week of opening? Or maybe you've tried to make your own ferments, followed online recipes, and ended up with mold, bad smells, and vegetables you were afraid to eat. That's because modern fermentation has been sanitized, pasteurized, and destroyed to the point where it barely resembles what our ancestors created. Medieval people understood that fermentation wasn't just preservation, it was transformation, food alchemy that made vegetables more nutritious, more digestible, and more medicinal than anything fresh. If you're tired of throwing away expensive probiotics that don't work and store-bought ferments that taste like disappointment, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to share this with others who are ready to learn how food is supposed to work. Now, let's uncover the fermentation secrets that Big Food buried. Number 1. Wild fermentation, the power of invisible allies. Today, when we think of fermentation, we think of buying expensive starter cultures online or hoping that the vegetables we bought have the right bacteria. Medieval people understood something profound. The vegetables themselves, the air in your cellar, even your hands, are already covered in exactly the bacteria you need. You don't need to buy anything. Nature provides everything. Wild fermentation, also called spontaneous fermentation, relies on the lactobacilli bacteria that naturally exist on the surface of all vegetables. These beneficial bacteria are everywhere, waiting to be activated. All you need is the right environment: salt, vegetables, and time. That's it. Here's the genius that modern food science is only now rediscovering. Wild fermentation creates a more diverse microbial ecosystem than any commercial starter culture. Instead of 1 or 2 bacterial strains, you get dozens, maybe hundreds, each contributing different enzymes, different acids, different flavors, and different health benefits. A 2019 study from Stanford University analyzed traditional wild fermented vegetables and compared them to modern commercial ferments. The wild fermented vegetables contained an average of 47 different beneficial bacterial strains. The commercial products averaged 3. The wild ferments produced more lactic acid, more B vitamins, and more digestive enzymes, and they lasted significantly longer without spoilage. Medieval households would pack vegetables into crocks with nothing but salt. The salt would draw out water from the vegetables, creating a brine. The lactobacilli would begin multiplying immediately, consuming sugars and producing lactic acid. Within days, the vegetables would be sour, crunchy, and teeming with beneficial bacteria. Within weeks, they'd be perfectly fermented. Within months, they'd reach peak flavor, and they'd stay perfect for years. Compare this to your store-bought pickles, pasteurized, which means heated to kill all bacteria, good and bad. Then, they add vinegar for fake sourness. The result tastes like pickles, but provides zero probiotic benefit. It's dead food pretending to be alive. Medieval fermentation created living food that improved your gut health with every bite. Modern food processing creates shelf-stable products that do nothing for you except empty your wallet. That's not progress, that's degradation. Number 2. Salt brining, The foundation technique. Walk into any medieval cellar and you'd find wooden barrels and clay crocks filled with vegetables submerged in salt water. This wasn't just convenient storage, it was deliberate microbiology that created the perfect environment for beneficial fermentation while preventing harmful bacteria from ever taking hold. Salt brining works through a principle that medieval people discovered through centuries of observation. Different bacteria have different salt tolerances. Lactobacilli, the beneficial bacteria we want, thrive in salt concentrations between 2% and 5%. Dangerous pathogens like E. coli and botulism-causing bacteria can't survive in that same environment. The salt creates a selective pressure that ensures only the good bacteria flourish. The technique was precise despite seeming simple. Vegetables were packed into containers. A brine of the correct salt concentration was poured over them until they were completely submerged. A weight, usually a stone or a wooden plate, kept the vegetables below the brine surface. That was essential. Anything exposed to air could mold. Everything under the brine was protected. German monastery records from the 1300s describe cabbage being brined in autumn and consumed throughout the following year, and even into the year after that. 2 years of perfect preservation. The records note that the oldest sauerkraut was considered the most valuable, reserved for healing the sick and feeding new mothers. Modern research confirms why extended fermentation creates more beneficial compounds. A 2017 study from the University of Leipzig analyzed sauerkraut aged for different lengths of time. Sauerkraut fermented for 6 months had significantly higher levels of glucosinolates, compounds that support immune function and reduce inflammation. The study also found that longer fermentation increased the concentration of probiotics by up to 300% compared to fresh sauerkraut. For modern homesteaders, salt brining offers something remarkable. You don't need special equipment, you don't need starter cultures, you need vegetables, salt, water, and a container. Your great-great-grandmother fed her family this way through winters that would have killed them otherwise. You can too. Medieval housewives created medicine in crocks. We buy expensive probiotics in capsules that don't survive our stomach acid. Number 3. Layered vegetable fermentation. The diversity method. Here's a technique that created nutritional synergy that modern food science is only beginning to understand. Medieval people didn't ferment one vegetable at a time. They layered different vegetables, herbs, and even fruits together in the same crock. The result was fermentation that was greater than the sum of its parts. The genius was understanding that different vegetables contribute different sugars, different bacteria, and different nutrients. Cabbage provides one type of lactobacilli, carrots provide another, beets contribute yet another. When fermented together, these bacteria interact, compete, and cooperate in ways that create a more robust fermentation and a more complex final product. The layering technique involved packing vegetables in alternating layers with salt between each layer. Cabbage on the bottom, then carrots, then beets, then onions, then back to cabbage. Sometimes herbs like dill, caraway, or mustard seed were added. Sometimes apples or pears were included for sweetness. Each layer contributed its own character to the whole. Eastern European records from the 1400s describe mixed vegetable ferments that were considered more valuable than single vegetable crocks. These mixed ferments were believed to have stronger medicinal properties. Specific combinations were used to treat specific ailments. Cabbage with beets for blood health, cabbage with carrots for digestion, cabbage with horseradish for respiratory issues. Modern nutritional science confirms what medieval healers knew empirically. A 2018 study from the Polish Academy of Sciences analyzed traditional mixed vegetable ferments. They found that the bacterial diversity was 60% higher in mixed ferments compared to single vegetable ferments. The study also found that certain bacterial strains only appeared when specific vegetables were fermented together, suggesting symbiotic relationships that can't occur in isolation. The practical benefit for you is simple. Instead of making separate batches of sauerkraut, pickled carrots, and fermented beets, you make one crock with everything. More nutrition, more flavor complexity, More efficiency, less work. Medieval people created complete nutrition in a single container. We buy 6 different probiotic supplements, hoping to cover all the bases. Number 4. Whole vegetable fermentation, preserving structure and nutrition. Modern fermentation recipes tell you to chop, shred, or dice everything. Makes sense, right? More surface area means faster fermentation, except medieval people did exactly the opposite. They fermented whole vegetables, and they had good reasons that modern research is now validating. Whole vegetable fermentation preserved more nutrients, created better texture, and resulted in longer shelf life. When you cut vegetables, you damage cell walls. Those damaged cells leak nutrients. They also create more surface area for oxidation. Whole vegetables, left intact, retain their cellular structure. The fermentation happens more slowly but more completely. The technique required understanding which vegetables could be fermented whole and how to prepare them. Cucumbers were fermented whole after a simple wash. Tomatoes went in whole, sometimes with a small knife prick to allow brine penetration. Whole heads of cabbage were cored and fermented as units. Even root vegetables like turnips and radishes were fermented whole if they were small enough. Russian and Ukrainian village records from the medieval period describe barrel fermentation of whole cucumbers that would last from summer harvest through the following spring. 18 months of perfect preservation. The cucumbers remained crunchy, flavorful, and nutritionally dense because the intact skin and cell structure protected the interior. A 2016 study from Moscow State University compared nutrient retention in whole fermented cucumbers versus chopped. The whole cucumbers retained 85% of their vitamin C after 6 months. The chopped cucumbers retained only 35%. The whole cucumbers also maintained superior texture and had higher concentrations of probiotic bacteria at the end of the fermentation period. For practical home fermentation, this means you can do less work and get better results. Don't chop, don't shred, just pack whole vegetables into your crock with brine and let nature do the work. Less labor, better nutrition, longer storage. Medieval people worked smarter, not harder. We've been convinced that more processing equals better results. They knew the opposite was true. Number 5. Root cellar fermentation, temperature mastery. Here's something that modern fermentation guides get catastrophically wrong. They tell you fermentation must happen at room temperature, usually around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and should be completed within a few weeks. Medieval people understood that the best fermentation happens slowly at cool temperatures over extended periods. Root cellar fermentation utilized the consistent cool temperatures found underground, year-round temperatures between 45 degrees Fahrenheit and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, fermentation proceeds slowly but steadily. The lactobacilli still thrive, but other organisms that might cause off flavors or spoilage are suppressed. The result is cleaner fermentation with superior flavor and longer shelf life. The technique was integrated into home design. Medieval houses, especially in Northern Europe, were built with cellars specifically designed for food storage. These weren't just holes in the ground. They were engineered spaces with ventilation, drainage, and temperature stability. The coolness preserved ferments. The darkness protected nutrients. The humidity was perfect for clay crocks. Scandinavian archaeological records describe root cellars with fermentation crocks that were packed in autumn and not opened until the following summer. 9 months of continuous slow fermentation at cool temperatures. When modern food scientists reconstructed these techniques, they found that the slow fermentation created vegetables with lower histamine levels, meaning fewer digestive issues, and higher levels of beneficial acids. A 2020 study from the Norwegian University of Life Sciences compared fermentation at different temperatures. Vegetables fermented at 50 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 months had 40% more beneficial bacteria than vegetables fermented at 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 weeks. They also had better texture, better flavor, and tested negative for the compounds that cause bloating and digestive discomfort in some people. For modern practitioners, this means if you have a basement, a garage, or any cool space, you can create superior ferments by simply slowing everything down. Pack your crock. Put it somewhere cool. Leave it alone. Check it in 6 months. Medieval wisdom meets modern convenience. Your ancestors understood that good things take time. We've been taught to rush everything and wonder why the results disappoint us. Number 6. Weighted fermentation, the submersion principle. This is the technique that separates successful medieval fermentation from failed modern attempts. Everything must stay submerged below the brine, always, no exceptions. Medieval people used stones, wooden plates, and even special ceramic weights to ensure vegetables never floated to the surface. The principle is absolute. Lactobacilli are anaerobic, meaning they ferment without oxygen. They thrive below the brine. Molds and dangerous yeasts are aerobic, meaning they need oxygen. They grow on any surface exposed to air. By keeping everything submerged, you create an environment where only beneficial fermentation can occur.